And I think this is becoming, look at your podcast, right? This is becoming more and more of a narrative of like, okay, what does it mean to be a physician in 2023 and 2024? And I think there's more to it than just grinding it out in the hospital.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. We have a conversation today with a guest who is an ER doctor, self-storage investor, and owner of Maven Success, a virtual assistant staffing company. After he started his real estate journey in single and multifamily, he transitioned to self-storage, and he hasn't looked back yet. I love the conversation today with our guest, talking about the journey from house hack to single family, multifamily, and into self-storage. But along the way, building this platform, implementing verticals within the businesses to increase the opportunity that you have. You're going to love this conversation. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Jordan Kapper. Hey, welcome to the show, Jordan. We are up and running here through a little bit of the old Wi-Fi wonders. We are ready to go. Welcome to the show, man.
Oh, absolutely excited to be here. I love the show you got. I love your background. And this is always like, my favorite thing. I always feel this kind of need to talk about the podcast host because honestly, it sounds like what you're doing is super cool. So I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to you to guide, I guess, to ask questions of me. But yeah, thanks again for having me on the show, man. I'm super excited.
Awesome. And you yourself, you have a little bit of a background in medicine and real estate and all kinds of stuff. We want to talk about this, but I always love starting off the show with just a little bit of background on your medical journey. Where'd you start and where are you at now?
Yeah, I know about this medical journey. So, it's the classic. And I say this for a couple different reasons. I think it's so important for doctors to like get this frame of what they're doing. And my evolution is college. I mean, I'm just listing higher education, right? Mm-hmm. High school, college, med school, residency. And this is such a linear path. And I think it really, it frames your mind. It frames your worldview in a very specific way, right? Like medicine, I know medicine, and that's kind of what you think about. And so going through this very standard medical path, at the end of it, it kind of leaves you like, okay, what am I going to do next? What is the goals here? And I think for some folks, and for me too, like I have that passion for medicine and this drive to do what's right for the patients. But then you get put into kind of realize, oh my God, we're operating in this massive corporate industry. And I personally felt a little bit like at a loss. And so, I started studying business. Actually, my first business venture out of medical school was launching a startup company, a home healthcare startup. COVID hit that very hard, but I learned a lot of really good things about marketing, about even the basics of finance, right? Like what is a P&L? And it's like, these are the things you literally don't know and they don't teach you. And so going from there, I actually kind of made this transition from this, very high risk, very difficult startup world to, I'm like, all right, maybe I go into something a little more straightforward. And that's real estate. Obviously it's not completely straightforward. But my journey there is basically, I also like to say kind of this standard journey that a lot of doctors go through, which is the single family. I should even start before the house hack to single family to multifamily to commercial of various types. And now I own Lantern Light Capital. We're a self-storage operations, investment, and management company. So we build and buy self-storage facilities.
And in that medical journey, you are an ER physician, correct?
Yeah. ER docs. It's funny. I see this. A lot of different docs have kind of different mentalities, and I see the different types of doctors going into business. You sit around the ER, and maybe it's the place that I'm working at right now. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, but I talk to every single ER doctor, and almost, I think there's one out of the 6 or 7 that I work with that isn't involved in business or real estate in some way. And I think that's kind of due to two things. One is the difficulty of emergency medicine as a whole, as a field. And there's a lot of external pressure there, and I guess internal as well, whole conversation. And then there's also this kind of grittiness and this ability to see the whole picture and to like maneuver that is inherent in our training. So, that medical training does offer, and I've always, I don't know if this is an F-bomb kind of podcast, but I've always said, F that to the, doctors can't be good business people, because you know what are you talking about? Like, okay, yeah, they didn't get great training, but it's just not true, right? These are some of the smartest, most savvy people. Yeah, they don't like to say that because they're trained to be overly humble, but like, you guys listening to this podcast are high achievers. You are smart people. You do see a bigger picture in medicine. And that does, once you have the basic foundations, translate over to business. And I see that in some of these guys I work with, just really impressive individuals in medicine. And I think this is becoming, look at your podcast, right? This is becoming more and more of a narrative of like, okay, what does it mean to be a physician in 2023 and 2024? And I think there's more to it than just grinding it out in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So there's so much to this. And, I let the listeners know I'm not a physician. I'm just completely on the outside looking in, which I feel is an interesting perspective, given I get to have these conversations with physicians all the time. But the corporate piece that you mentioned, how like almost like the squeeze that's put you in, and the insurance world. I mean, those two things right there are monsters, and how that affects the mental health of physicians is just crazy. That paired alongside of this education thing you also talked about are three things kind of added up in here that kind of control this path for physicians. But yes, we are in a day where, good or bad, the speed of data is lightning. The speed of communication is lightning. So there's so many opportunities that come along with that. It's just because that's the way that it is doesn't mean that's the way that it's going to go. So I love talking with physicians now, having these opportunities. Everybody has their own journey. We all have these stack of experiences put together. And the one thing that separates or creates the most opportunity is the entrepreneurial perspective. And physicians can be good business people. Just because your passion has focused your education to this point, don't stop learning when you get out of school. Continue shifting. And I see that in you, Jordan, and taking these, the medical startup. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about Maven too. I'm interested in that. Another business startup. And now with the capital, Lanternlight Capital, with investing, there's so much there, the world of entrepreneurship. And yes, the basic language of business management is that financial piece, P&L, balance sheet. Maybe let's talk, basics.
So
right?
good. And, I'll say this, doctors have this natural proclivity to not talk about money. And it's a worldview. It's a frame. It's based on our training. And it's like, you just don't talk about it, right? It's bad. It's bad to talk about money. And I get it. Like, it's kind of an American phenomenon, but like, money doesn't have to be, there's other tropes I don't like. It's like, oh, everything's about the money. Like, okay, well, not always. Some things are about the system. Some things, whether it's politically or financially, or how a giant crypto firm collapses, or, just anything, right? It's not always just, oh, it's about the money. Sometimes it's about the systems, the policies, the procedures, the culture. And money is just this, it's this tool. It's this thing that, yes, obviously it's very important. And if you're doing a deal, you want to look at, what are the returns? But there's so much more to the world than just like, oh, money is bad, and it's kind of a cliche to talk about it, or you shouldn't talk about it, right? And to get past that and just kind of understand that, to operate a business, you need to know those very basics. I advise for a lot of different folks in different aspects of business, whether it be startup or even, the neighbor, friend, doctor saying, hey, I'm thinking about getting involved in real estate. I'm thinking about starting a Botox clinic or whatever. And the first thing I'll say is like, okay, so can we go through your expected, revenue and your expenses? And it's just this frame, and it just allows you to frame a simple business so clearly. And having those basic business chops is so important, whether you're starting a dog grooming company or you're looking at a self-storage investment like we have right now, right? So we do these ground up self-storage deals, and the key to the entire deal is, can we operate it? Are we savvy operators? Do you have faith in us? And two, do the numbers look good, and the underlying assumptions that we're taking to get to those returns, to get to those numbers, do those look good? And that is the deal. I love to talk about the digital marketing and the operations. And, you mentioned Maven Success. So I have a virtual assistant staffing company. And this is actual humans, not something has changed in the past year where the word virtual assistant has taken a different tone, and people think it's literally artificial intelligence, but we do real live human staffing. So, you're a self-storage facility like us, and you're looking for an employee that is going to be a little more cost effective, right? So we staff folks from the Philippines, from Egypt, from Central America, to work in all kinds of different fields. Taking all of these kind of experiences together and understanding how the operations matter is it's so important. And being able to, as an investor, as a doctor, to just go back to those basics of understanding the business that you're doing. And the basic is just understanding the finances of it.
Finances and speaking the language and not being afraid of it is a big piece.
Yeah.
Going through the career education, or is it career education or education career? Is that kind of, can you say it either way?
Oh, that's an interesting, little bit of semantics there, because it's a career for sure.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So going through that path, you're limited. I'd say, many people are limited in not getting into the business, capacity when you're in med school, obviously. And I think about that sometimes too, Jordan. I like, when I learned first time, and I tell this story a lot, sitting in, it was a mastermind kind of sitting in a lecture. And when I realized that, you could buy a house, have a loan on that house, and the renter will pay you rent, the tenant will pay you rent, and it would be greater than the mortgage, and you could cash flow off of it and all this stuff. It was mind blowing. And I instantly was upset. I have a feeling of upset. Like, why didn't I learn this before? Why didn't I get taught this in school? Maybe for me, I wasn't ready for it, or maybe somebody did show me that and I just didn't hear it or see it at the time.
I don't know. That gets into like a conversation about society as a whole, or education as a whole, or, even the value of family, right? And I think it depends on where you came from. These are the basic things that I teach my kid, right? Baby Cap, little baby Jordan, he's 5 years old. He knows the basics of finance. He sits with me. He goes to the self-storage facilities. He watches the podcasts on YouTube, and so this is his basic understanding. And to me, it's more of a worldview, right? It's like knowing, okay, so I don't have a great worldview on how, commercial fishing works, right? Like I just don't understand it, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I just picked that out of random, right? But like, I do have a basic worldview of how finances work now, of how business works, of how to invest, even something like private equity, right? It's this like kind of nebulous concept, but it's not rocket science. Like they're doing, you could say, a house flip on a larger scale, right? And it's like, you can dig into these numbers. And again, it's not that crazy complex, and having those fundamentals of how a business works is so, so important. And with making a little pivot, I guess, to content and talking about what we're doing right now, I think it's very important to push that, right? And that's, where this conversation naturally goes. And that's what I try to put out with a lot of my content towards investors. It's like, okay, you're a doctor, you want to understand the different investments. Well, one way is to get involved. And there's always this like, well, you got to do something. You got to just make that first jump. And yes, I agree. It is always useful. My very first investment in self-storage was a syndication. So as a limited partner, a passive syndication, and I didn't fully understand it, right? Like I didn't have the understanding I have now, but I jumped in and I got to learn more. I understood the finances. I read the PPM. I read all the documents. I listened to the podcast. I did all that. And it's like, okay, now I feel very confident in so many more things and how investing works. And that gets to my internal strategy, right? So I built this own kind of internal investment strategy as a whole. And to kind of go back to your original statement is like, maybe you said, maybe somebody told me that and I just didn't listen. I don't know. Nobody really told me in a reasonable way. You know, there's a lot of ways to teach. And I come from an education background as an academic attending, teaching the residents, and you can say a single sentence that might be incredibly profound, but if somebody doesn't hear it, process it, and understand the framework behind it all, they're not going to take it deep within them. And I think going out there, listening to podcasts, talking to business owners, looking at financials, it can be fun, it can be useful, and there's a little bit of a learning curve at first, but the payoffs are huge, and your understanding of the world as a whole can be huge. I thought we were supposed to talk about like building self-storage facilities and stuff.
Yeah, I guess
I love these conversations. Yeah, so honestly, like
I'm digging into some of this stuff that I think is the foundational piece of investing. I think we talk about that more than the actual bits and pieces. Like you mentioned PPM, private placement memorandum, not digging into stuff like that, but those pieces come up in these conversations,
Yep.
I just want to jump back just a step. When you mentioned family, you said education and then family. And that to me stands out because that is it means so much. And when we talk about marriage, family, education, all of this stuff comes in the same pipeline. And now, thank you for mentioning this because now this aligns, business savvy aligns with the same thing because it's yes, you're completely right. Little Cap knows it. My kids know it, and they see us live that life, right? So they understand, they catch. It's not taught to them. They're catching it because they're seeing it's all around them. And I just made me think too, this book, Think and Grow Rich. Inside of that, there is a list of, 30 major causes of failure. And the very first one is unfavorable hereditary background, meaning like to me, I see that as your family, your upbringing, how they're conditioning you, right? And there are ways out. Some of us, I did not grow up in a family that had any idea about business or investing or anything like that. And here I am sitting here having this conversation with you, sharing my investing experience, sharing your investing experience. And the way that I overcome that is 100% the same way that's mentioned in this book by Napoleon Hill is the power of a mastermind, the aid of a mastermind, surrounding yourself with the right people, and even if it's on a podcast like this, in meetups, whatever you need to do, surround yourself with the right people. You can overcome that family piece, but that family piece is huge.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's not to say, oh, you come from a bad family. It's just like, it's that worldview, right? And even, I see this pressure from some of the neighbors, some of the other folks I interact with who come from like very established families who have like all doctors, right? And the world, it sounds like a trope, but the world is changing and what it means to be a doctor is changing. And gone are the days, I think, where a normal, regular internal medicine, endocrine, ER, whatever doctor is going to live this like great, stress-free, like, prestigious life. And I think there's some antiquated thought there sometime like, oh, my mother said I have to be a doctor. This is like what I have to be. And it's like, okay, that's good. I love being a doctor. There's really cool things, but you can no longer just focus on that. You have to have a little more of an investing and financial worldview of the environment you're operating in. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to take a hack at it yourself, whether it means getting into real estate, whether it means starting your own clinic, whether it means doing some marketing for your own clinic, or investing like what we have, right? Like I said, my first investment was one of these passive syndications, and we're raising money now. So part of what we do is all of our syndication deals with Lantern Light Capital, all of our ground up self-storage syndication deals, we allow all the investors to just have full back-end access. You got all the documents, you have everything, like it's opened up. And so we have our meetings, we have we do a weekly and a monthly kind of all hands meeting for self-storage, right? For managing these facilities and the strategy. And it's not like it's this crazy fun thing, it's not like oh my God, this is great. No, it's like the nitty gritty details. Okay. How are the numbers looking? Is there an operations issue? Is there an issue with the phone number linked up to the website? All these little things. And it can give you this understanding of, oh, this is how these guys do it. It's not this crazy secret sauce that we have. It's just a lot of hard work, a lot of meetings, a good team, everybody on the same page, and sound fundamentals of underwriting these deals. Like that's what we do. And so, to, I guess, plug a little bit for what we do is like, yeah, if you want to be involved, we're glad to take on some folks looking to start that journey into self-storage.
Awesome. And your path started with a house hack, right? I just want to repeat this because I think it's a very interesting path, and it should be replicated for those who may align with that house hack. So brief description of how that worked out for you.
I actually kind of fell into a duplex. I wasn't even really thinking about it. And it was my first house that I ended up buying right outside of residency. My only regret ever with any house that I've ever bought was that I didn't buy a more or buy a bigger one. Right. And of course, the whole time in the market thing, right? Instead of timing the market, that trope seems to be fairly true over a decent time scale. So start off with a duplex, actually started off renting a room in it. Now it's a duplex, and then moved on there to another multifamily and another multifamily. And the transition to self-storage was actually, and there's a lot of, you can get into all that stuff. I'll take a brief aside. You can look into the Burr model, right? Where you buy these houses and rehab them, and then they're worth more, and then you refinance, right? And you do that again. There's a lot of different ways you can understand these deals. But again, they're not terribly complex once you know how they work. It's just those fundamentals. And so I was doing this single family, multifamily kind of thing. And then actually a friend of mine, Sean Graham, who's also the owner of Maven Success, this virtual assistant staffing company that we own. We had been longtime friends, very trusted partners. We went in to kind of this commercial space, and we said, where do we want to enter? And this is a very purposeful decision. We had a lot of conversations. We explored these residential assisted living facilities. We explored larger commercial deals like multifamily, right? Apartments and stuff like that. And we basically said, okay, self-storage is the number one performing commercial real estate asset of the past 20 years. It has this self-storage facility can be operated perfectly. It can be operated correctly. And that's what we tried to do. And so my self-storage deal, or my first commercial deal, was this self-storage where we purposefully went out there and said, okay, let's invest in self-storage.
How long was it for you as a limited partner to actually become active and convert into a general partner?
Concept was very vague to me. Sorry, connecting to the internet there. I didn't know what due diligence was initially. And Sean and I started looking at this deal right by my house, and we dug into all the financials. This is the first time we were like digging into self-storage in depth. And that deal ended up falling through for just regular reasons, right? The seller wanted to do something else. He didn't like our price point, whatever, just normal stuff. But we got a good foundation of understanding self-storage facilities from basically screwing it around for 6 months, doing due diligence on this facility that didn't work out. And so then the next one was much more straightforward, I should say.
And I apologize, I missed the gap in time from limited partner to general partner. So how many times were you in limited partner deals?
I did one LP deal, and then my next deal I was a GP, and it was about 6 months.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And that 6 months was filled with me actually just underwriting and doing due diligence on this deal that basically fell through. And it fell through, like I said, for very reasonable reasons, just wasn't going to work out due to the numbers that we were trying to put forward from the seller. But it was really good experience to put in an offer, look at all the studies, go to the city, double check the zoning, see if expansion would work, all these things that you do with self-storage development. And then the next deal we got into was very straightforward.
And for the listeners out there who are, maybe wanting to pull the trigger and becoming more active, the one thing that I would think about is the time that you put into it. So if you could just estimate, like on your first deal, how many hours a week were you devoting to due diligence, basically? And then, what's the operation side of it? Like, what would you target for active hours invested into that?
I hesitate to say this exactly. Well, so one, active hours are many. Right now I probably spend 30 to 40 hours a week on self-storage. I'm full-time self-storage. And then I come and work these shifts in the ER. I do locums med, so I still do some emergency medicine work. And when I'm working, that cuts down a lot. But I'm full-time in self-storage, I should say. And I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but I would say it is very hard. I don't like the term passive income in many contexts. I think it's disingenuous. Now, if you're an LP in a syndication, yeah, that is literally passive income. Or if you're investing in your friend's business, right, that is passive income. Or if you're investing in the stock market and it's actually getting good returns, that's passive income, right? But to say, okay, I want to buy a self-storage facility because it can be managed online, well, that's just not going to happen. It is not passive. And so the amount of time and effort that I've put into getting to where I am now and the understanding I have now has to at least be, 5,000 to 10,000 hours. It's, I took the same thing I did in residency, grinding and listening and learning and filling in knowledge gaps. It's not easy. If anybody tells you it's going to be easy, it's like, what are you talking about? Maybe if you timed the market 20 years ago and you bought something and sat on it, but it is definitely a ton of work. And that's where, this kind of spin-off company, right? So we have Lantern Light Capital, which is self-storage ground up development and investing company where we raise money and pitch to like doctors like this, right? That's the point of this podcast. Get the word out there, look for investors. So that's Lantern Light Capital. And then Maven Success is a remote employee staffing company. And that came up because Sean and I had started to heavily use remote employees, right? And the price point is good, and these folks can be really, really smart. And Sean and I went through a lot of, trials and tribulations understanding this market of remote employees, Philippines, Egypt, Central America, and kind of getting our footing with understanding who's good, who's not, what's a good price to pay, and realizing that if we're going to automate these facilities, which again, it's not automated. It's a full-time job that I'm working in self-storage. If we're going to automate these facilities, we have to have a team. And if you want to do anything in real estate and investing that is at scale, and you're not just putting in those hours yourself, you got to build a team. And so that's what we did. Right now, I think I probably have 17 remote employees between all of the different companies, doing various jobs, whether it's marketing or back-end finance, bookkeeping, customer support. We have our own call center, the self-storage facility, and these guys answer and manage these calls. We just couldn't do it without an entire team. And that's why this other company, Maven Success, kind of spun out of all of this, is to say, okay, well, we've gotten pretty good at this. Maybe we should help other folks try to, run their business with real employees.
Awesome. And just want to throw that out there, vertically integrated. So as you're running this platform, and you call that a spinoff, and there's so many things, and this should happen in the medical journeys, if you have an idea, so the first one maybe in the medical company you started, then maybe there was an opportunity to grow that, or if somebody's got a patent or an idea or a pharmaceutical or something. There's so many avenues where this could work, and real estate is another one of those where we build these verticals and allows us to generate more income. If you could go back, Jordan, say 15 years and set beside that person who may have been on the same path as you, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. Like, because that question gets to, what can you tell them or me that you would listen to, right? Like because read and consume knowledge and stuff is probably a pretty good answer, right? Because once you have the knowledge, the decision gets a lot easier on what to do. And it's like, the vertical integration, right? And what is vertical integration? It just means, you're operating a business, but you're controlling all the aspects of the things that get done. Like, for example, I'm not vertically integrated when it comes to the locks for my self-storage facility. I am not a lock manufacturer, right? Obviously that's a little bit extreme, but I am vertically integrated now with the call center, with the management, with the doing all the due diligence and understanding the finances, with staffing the remote employees, right? Like, so this is all vertically integrated. And how was I able to do this? It's through understanding the big picture. So I think, to answer your question, what is the one bit of advice that I would give to somebody that's starting off, right? 15 years ago, I would say start by just consuming as much knowledge as possible and then act on it. Because it's that knowledge that matters so much. Knowledge and then act on it. I don't know another good piece of advice, because it's really hard, because whatever I say, if I come up with this great statement, you need to start small and go big, or you need to focus on fundamentals. What does that mean to somebody who doesn't have that foundation of what we were talking about before, of the basics of business? I think start consuming knowledge would be my one bit of advice. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about that one? I didn't have that on locked and loaded, the answer to that question. I would love to hear what you.
I love it. I love asking that. And through time, I've modified that question just a little bit, because I don't. Somebody asks me that, it's like I wouldn't change a thing about where I'm at, because it's created who I've become. And to go back and change that, it's not something that I would want to do. So I rephrase that question and say, if you sat beside somebody headed in the same direction, what would you tell them? And I love that, consume and act, those two things. So there's knowledge and there's wisdom. And in my life, I've consumed knowledge, right? I've consumed information and created this knowledge. And for me, wisdom is something where we take that knowledge and act upon it. And that's where that true wisdom, because then that gives you experience. And I mentioned before, like, we all have our own journeys, and we have these very specific stack of experiences. And that experience is where that wisdom is created. So if you could go back and look at that, and even add to that, taking measure of the big picture and understanding your why. Where are you headed? Why do you want to go there? Why do you want time? Why do you want money? Dig down and really find that point where you can have self-realization, because that's where you're going to grow the most. No matter what knowledge or wisdom that you do have, as long as it's aligned with that person who you feel you've been designed to become, that's where all of the happiness really comes from. Because wisdom and knowledge and money and all of that stuff may not bring you that true happiness. And sometimes it doesn't have to be money and all of that. But in order to get to any of that, Jordan, you're 100% right. It's start consuming. Start consuming and act on it in a way that the listeners can do this in the storage world is lanternlightcap.com, LANTERNLIGHTCAP.com. I love spelling that, because sometimes I just get it wrong. But that's where they can go and learn a little bit more about you and your journey. But For the listeners too, you gave us the okay to go ahead and give out your cell phone number because you want people who want to invest with you to text you directly, right?
Just text me. Yeah, text me directly. It's 727-251-9319. If you're interested in investing in self-storage, then go ahead, shoot me a text. And I'll make a plug for one more course that I hate to call it a course. It's not a course. It's basically a set of videos on how a syndication deal is structured. These are very dense, but I think they are the single best piece of knowledge on the entire internet on how a syndication, on how like an LP, GP real estate syndication is structured. I have that course. I can text it to you if you want it. Just text me, course. I'll probably this isn't automated yet. I'll automate this eventually, but it's literally just, I recorded. It is me sitting in front of a computer for 4 hours, digging into the very detailed way that these deals are structured and how limited partners can kind of be either manipulated or, how things can go wrong a little bit or how a deal might not be structured in the best way for you. We try to structure all our deals with that. I'd love for our investors to listen to that first because they're right on the same page with us and why we try to structure the deals to be very friendly for LPs because for limited partners, right? For investors, because in the end, when it comes to developing these deals, if you don't deliver for your limited partners, then you're not going to be able to grow and scale. And so that's our number one motivation is always deliver. And if we got limited partners that know the fundamentals, it's just it makes them much more likely to invest because it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. It takes away that bit of gambling that you feel like when you're giving away that $50,000 check, like, oh, I don't know what the heck's going on here. So if you want that course, I'm glad to send it to you. It's dense, but it is damn good. It took me a while to kind of get to that level of knowledge of how these things are structured because they do get a tad bit complex, right? Like the GPLP split, the hurdles that are in there. What is preferred return? What's
waterfall
preferred? The waterfalls,
PPMs and operating agreements. And
it's a 4-hour course, right? It is true. Like there's no other way to say it. That is dense. And if you want to sit and you really want some good verbal audio chat, just like I would teach you about, the Krebs cycle or something like that. Well, then God bless, I'll teach you about the Krebs cycle.
Awesome. Well, I think we could just kind of button it up with the old saying that I say so much. Nobody's going to care more about your money than you do. So spend the time. Don't stop learning. Always, 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 always learn. Learn to ask the right questions. Learn to have the right people on your team. And base that off of experience, full cycle deals, and this type of information that you gain from this type of offer here with Jordan. Jordan, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Absolutely, my friend. Good chatting with you as well. I love the kind of the more meta conversations about investing and stuff. It's always
foundation.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Appreciate your time. And to the listeners out there today, take a look at this, the world of self-storage, the platform of operating, I think is really important. Learning the way that Jordan and his team will open up the back end, pull the curtains back and allow you to learn. Don't be a lazy learner. Get in, get your hands dirty, get over yourself of saying, oh, I don't have time. Find the time. Find your why. Your why will pull you through finding that timepiece. You can text Jordan directly at 727-251-9319. And if you got any questions for us, please feel free to shoot us an email, info@physicianwealthsystems.com. And thank you again for your time. And more importantly, as always, thank you for your attention.